Prime Minister Narendra Modi has looked the dragon in the eye and said, I will not cower, the Indian people will not bow, every inch of our land will be defended. The critical question now, what happens at the border? Will China realize its folly and start disengaging and pulling back in a meaningful fashion? Or are we now headed towards a kinetic escalation? Joining us at this time live is the finest team of defense correspondents in this country. I want to go across to Gaurav Sawant, our strategic affairs editor in Delhi, Shiv Arur, who understands weapon systems better than anyone else I know. Abhishek Bhalla is our man on the ground in 14 Corps in Leh. Ashraf Wani is our bureau chief in Srinagar. Geeta Mohan is our foreign affairs editor. I want to go across first and foremost to Gaurav Sawant for your interpretation of how you see the situation in 14 Corps, where you've spent so much time over the last few days, go from here. You've been speaking to officers at every level in the military there. What's your sense of where we are going after what the Prime Minister said?
Now the Prime Minister has laid out India's red lines. He said, "Veer Bhogya Vasundhara."
Not the meat, and peace comes from strength. So this is the simple line to our soldiers on ground, that we are not to cede an inch of territory to the Chinese, which is what our braves at Galwan did on the night of 15th of June, where 20 braves made the supreme sacrifice of their lives. So Rahul, that's the simple red line that's been set out. After that, negotiations are happening. India wants China to get back to the free main line, which is wicket up to finger 8, go beyond finger 8, get back from Galwan, and wherever Chinese forces have come. Incidentally, Rahul, a lot of Chinese movement is also for show. They've come to the line of actual control, but their bigger armor, artillery, their infantry combat vehicles are still in the rear. And this shows that China is posturing. India wants to call China's bluff. It's difficult. It will take time. We may be there for the long haul, but from what sources tell India today, India will call China's bluff in Ladakh and stand ground and not cede an inch of territory, Rahul.
Shiv, given the nature of deployment and the fact that the Chinese have also brought in their reserve forces, do you actually see any possibility of China pulling back just because the Prime Minister has made this rousing speech and signaled India's intent? How do you see the situation go from here?
Well, to see them rolling back because the Prime Minister was there, would be to trust the Chinese too much and to see this as too much of a black and white situation. In the words of someone I spoke to yesterday, Rahul, 36 hours after the single largest 24-hour mobilization by the Chinese, they're not here to move back so soon. So they're going to be here for the long haul. As we've reported on the ground, precisely the opposite of de-escalation is actually happening. Two fresh divisions, as Abhishek reported recently, have been rolled into place in some of those depth areas, across from the Galwan Valley and Hot Springs area. So the Chinese are here to stay for the foreseeable future. And by the foreseeable future, I mean into and perhaps across the winter as well. What the Prime Minister has done today, Rahul, as you well know, starting with catching the Chinese off guard by landing in Leh. They didn't expect that at all. I'm sure they had no idea about it, and that explains the late reaction from the Chinese as well. Is a very direct message to say that India is fully behind its troops. They will mobilize more than just token mirror mobilizations. If you look at the nuts and bolts of how India has mobilized, with each passing day, as you have reported on your show as well, Rahul, the idea that India is ready for a kinetic escalation is real and present. And the Prime Minister being there and saying the country is fully behind you only sends out a message to the troops saying, if this escalates, of course he didn't say that, but if this escalates, the country is fully behind you. I think that was the real message.
And Abhishek Bhalla, you're on the ground. Have you had a chance to speak to any of the officers, the Jawans who were present when the Prime Minister was speaking? Because it's difficult for civilians to fathom the kind of impact a speech of this kind. No soldier sitting over there would have heard anything like this since the time he started service. To hear your Commander-in-Chief come out and say what he did, what's your sense of how the troops have responded to that?
Rahul, the feedback that I've got after this visit is that, it's much more than just a morale booster. The troops on the ground now know for a fact that they have the back of the top man in the country. It's very clear that even for a young officer or a Jawan in the army or in the armed forces, getting a pat on the back or a handshake from a commanding officer or a star officer is a big thing. Here it's the Prime Minister of the country who's come in an area which is undergoing a lot of confrontation, and amid all the tussle, he has spent time with the troops. Needless to say, this will have a huge impact on each one of them who is facing this Chinese aggression, and the message to them has been given before. It's just another reiteration by the Prime Minister being himself on the ground and also getting a first-hand brief from top commanders on what is India's preparedness, number one, and number two, if the need be, how can we respond? And the third important factor is what are the Chinese activities that are happening at the line of actual control as of now.
Geeta Mohan, meanwhile, we see the Ministry of External Affairs has been in overdrive speaking to Japan, the United States and other countries about the military build-up along the line of actual control. Give our viewers a sense of what the diplomatic corps has been doing to bolster the efforts the military is making and the politicians are.
Well, to start with, Rahul, the statement from the Chinese Foreign Ministry is quite clear that after Prime Minister landing in Ladakh, China is a bit rattled, but that does not mean that this issue is going to be resolved anytime soon. I was speaking to my sources and they're very clear that this is the long haul. We'll have to wait for the entire conversations and negotiations to take place. And on that front, we saw a lot of support come India's way from the West, from Australia, but not so much from Far East and Southeast Asia. Having a conversation with the Japanese envoy over here and the Japanese envoy coming out and making such a strong statement in itself is a huge comment on how the world community, international community, is coming together supporting India. Only a few countries have come out in support of China, particularly Pakistan, not even Russia, Rahul. Russia has been very careful, has been asking both sides to talk, and despite all objections from the Chinese side, continues to sell arms to India, calls India a strategic partner. So we've seen a lot of support for the Indian side from the Southeast Asian countries. Taiwan, Jizubu, the foreign minister, spoke up, but all the others are rather wary and cautious because of the Chinese aggression in their own territories. But they've all mentioned the kind of aggression that they're seeing, growing aggression that they're seeing from the Chinese. Having said that, this is a significant statement coming from Japan. We're looking at a quad complete engagement and statement when it comes to how they want to tackle China, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but now directed against China at the India-China border as well.
Thanks, Geeta, for that update. I want to go across now to Major General Gigi Dwivedi. Now, he's been our military attaché in Beijing, which means he understands the Chinese military, its style of operation, and its manner of thinking better than most. He also has a PhD in China. And we've got General Gurmeet Singh also joining us. General Dwivedi, to you first. If you were in the PLA, sitting in Beijing, listening to the Prime Minister wearing combat gear and speaking the manner that he did, how do you think PLA would be decoding and interpreting what they heard from India's Prime Minister?
Well, Rahul, firstly, always a pleasure to come on your channel, and also my compliments to you for covering the issue so closely. Well, if you ask me a question as to how PLA is going to view Prime Minister Modi's visit to Leh on the front line, I'll just like to go back as to how we should view firstly what Chinese intent was, and then I'll say how they will view this development. Well, Chinese had a very clear intent, and they picked up a leaf from Mao's Red Book. That's what Xi Jinping has played, but at a smaller scale. Is taking advantage of the global environment. He has picked up very important pieces of ground, that is Pagong So, Galwan and Depsang, to make certain amount of tactical gains, to give a very clear message to India, both strategically and tactically, that we mean business in Ladakh and they want the territory. Now, how PLA would view? Well, PLA has no plans to go back because they came in with a very clear intent to enlarge the hold on the territory, shift the line of actual control so that they can dominate Trishul, they can dominate Dalit Beg Old Darbuk Road, and they can also pose threat to Siachen from the Depsang side. Now that is their stated aim. I think initially they have achieved the aim. So PLA is not going to go back just because Prime Minister Modi has visited Leh Ladakh, but there is a very clear message. Message is that India is not going to accept this aggressive posture of PLA, and India will go to any extent to get the PLA back to the April line. And I think Prime Minister Modi has fired the first shot by making the intent very clear, because please understand, the political intent and the military intent must be in sync. So Prime Minister, having spoken to the field commanders, must have given in mind in very clear terms what he expects. And now the field commanders have no doubt or no dichotomy as to how to go about it. I think the first shot has been fired, and the story is just opening out, and we are going to go in for a long haul, and this is just the beginning of the part one.
Okay, General Gurmeet Singh, if this was a war game and this was divided between blue and red armies, how do you see the next few days play themselves out? Because the Indian political leader has signaled very clearly that what the enemy nation has done is not acceptable, and therefore now will the enemy choose to press ahead, stay where they are, or how do you see the situation evolve?
Well, that's a very good question, and I would like to thank you for this query. Let me tell you, at this present moment, it is at 5 levels. Firstly, there's a tension on ground. Secondly, there's a preparation both sides. Thirdly, there's meetings which have happened, and disengagement is going on. And fourthly, it is not only military, it's all elements of war which have actually enjoined the conflict. Whether it's a boycott, it's a ban, or it's a diplomatic relationship, all have enjoined at the moment. And we got to see in the backdrop of what happened on 15th of June. In fact, on 15th of June, some strategic messages have been given very, very strongly. Firstly, it has exposed the PLA, the lies, propagandas, and entire thing that built up through media, psychological war, that has been shattered in totality. Next is that I think biggest problem of being Indian had been earlier that we didn't know our self-worth. So I would like to, in fact, all the intellects in the nation must understand what is the self-worth of India. Please do not relate to 60s, but relate to 20s at the present moment. In fact, what Prime Minister has done today by going there first-hand, contact with the soldier, going and seeing the things himself, heard the briefing of the commanders, he's given strategic messaging today. And this strategic message is going to be received by the world. It is going to be received by the China. It is going to be received by PLA.
But General Dwivedi, my understanding of mountain warfare is that it gives terrain and positions give an advantage to whoever is in a defensive formation, and it's tougher for anyone trying to dislodge somebody in the mountains. You need that much more force ratio to be able to achieve your military aims. If China has entrenched itself in the manner in which those satellite images show, and there's no reason to doubt them, will the Indian military, and you understand the capabilities of the Chinese army also, will the Indian military have the ability to dislodge China from Pangong Tso, where the incursions have happened, and in other places where there is an incursion across the line of actual control, if it were to come to that? How do you see this play itself out militarily? General Dwivedi?
Yeah, well, I think Rahul, you have very clearly brought out that in mountains, the terrain favors the defender, and whosoever takes the initial initiative is actually at a tremendous, I think, advantage as far as the ground is concerned. But then there are, various ways you can always, get the better of the defender. You can go at a place which is unheld. You can do the countervailing. Well, you can also make certain tactical gains. These are all matter of details. But I want to make two things very clear. That definitely Chinese have an advantage, but there is enough, room space. There's enough ways of tactics and strategy to snatch the advantage from them. And second point is that you can always do countervailing at the position of your own choosing. You don't have to go and bang your head against the wall. You also choose a very similar situation. After all, please remember, But Chinese have a claim line, and India also has a claim line. So we must start, I think, loud and clear that we also would like to retrieve our claim line.
You know, I think this is very important, that Indians don't get caught up in political rhetoric and start saying what happened in, for example, Pangong, where they're in between finger 4 and 8. The larger question is, can we respond with the full suite of diplomatic, military, economic tools that we have in our arsenal, rather than getting caught in political mudslinging? Sushant Sareen also joins us, Colonel Dilly also joins us. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, we'll continue looking at how this India-China border face-off is likely to play itself out now that the Prime Minister has gone to Ladakh and signalled in as clear terms as possible India's intent. Aar ya par, whatever will be, will be. We'll return on the other side of a quick break. Stay with us.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.